Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Hinata, Fem Kyuubi and Tsunade. Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Tenten was not a happy girl when her father made her release the katana so Naruto could put it away and they could continue the tour. She felt better when Naruto promised he'd make it up to her later. She saw the grin on his face and knew Naruto never broke a promise, so she smiled and relented. Tenten loved the house, especially when she saw a weapon on the wall, but she kept her composure for the rest of the tour mostly. She knew it'd be worth it. I can always go back and look at it later. Tenten thought with a smile. She knew cooking wasn't really her thing, as anyone who tasted her food would testify to, but she was very impressed by the kitchen. It was massive. She did comment expertly on the knives though, they were weapon quality and as sharp as the blade sold in her father's shop, which he agreed on after he checked for himself. That made Naruto smile. Everything they saw was handmade, nothing in the entire house was mass-produced, not even the towels in the bathrooms, which were as large as most of the shops in the village. The private hot spring at the back of the house was even bigger. It's one of the only 3 in the village. The second was at the public bathhouse, the last being in the Hokage mansion. The first floor, everyone soon discovered, was more like a first-class resort than a home. The second floor, however, was like a hotel in many ways, primarily due to all the bedrooms. Also on the second floor was the Namikaze family library. Tsunade told the amazed group, with a little embarrassment, that it was even more extensive than the library at the Hokage compound. The collection of books and scrolls had everyone glassy-eyed, especially after Tsunade told them that there were scrolls here even the Hokage library didn't have. Many were collected from around the world, but most were created by Naruto's father Minato, who was a master of creating new seals and jutsu of every kind, taijutsu, genjutsu and ninjutsu, as well as every element from the 5 common affinities to the extremely rare metal affinity, which even Tsunade had only seen once in her life. The few are bloodline related and usable only by members of certain clans. Jiraiya said, then smirked at Tsunade knowingly. Curious, everyone turned to Tsunade, who immediately changed the subject and glared venomously at Jiraiya. Naruto didn't say where it was, but he mentioned there was a special vault of scrolls that were far too powerful to keep in the library, similar to the forbidden scrolls of the Hokage. One book in particular caught everyone's attention as they prepared to continue the tour, most had missed it when they came in. It was a huge book, 3 feet wide by 4 feet high and 8 inches thick. It was very old, but in very good condition. It was leather-bound with a familiar orange swirl on the cover and had a black metal lock on it. "What's in it, Naruto-kun?" Sakura asked, her love of books and scrolls no secret. "I don't know, Sakura-chan." Naruto said, scratched the back of his head and smiled. "She won't let me open it yet, but we're pretty sure that key from the box I got is for the lock. I do know that it's from Dad's family, a special Namikaze album or something, right Ba-chan?" Tsunade's left eyebrow twitched. "Hi, and for now it stays locked, you little brat." Naruto frowned and glared at Tsunade. But the last few rooms checked, one of which was the master bedroom that Naruto used, everyone headed downstairs to the dining hall, where a huge buffet was being set up by the newly hired staff. After a brief struggle with Choji to keep him from starting early, Naruto took everyone out the back door to get to the last part of the tour, including a whimpering Choji who waved to the food. "I'll see you soon," Choji said to the food. As all the guests discovered, the bulk of the compound was the grounds behind the house. The rest was a huge obstacle course that even to the jounin present looked formidable. There were 4 separate training areas, each with its own unique features, and an almost 2-acre lake. "Before we get to the fun, let's go back to the house and get some food," Naruto said. Choji cheered. "We're gonna need it," Naruto said seriously and smirked. Some of them laughed, a few excitedly, and a couple quite nervously the way Naruto's tails waved excitedly behind him. Not everyone was worried or even excited about what was going to happen, as some of the adults weren't skilled shinobi. So they couldn't enjoy the training areas and obstacle course, which everyone figured was part of what Naruto had planned. Once back inside the house, everyone dug in, though only a few with as much enthusiasm as Naruto ate ramen. Everyone found at least 2 things they loved, and Choji had no problems at all. He methodically worked his way down the tables. Naruto stopped counting after Choji filled his 12th plate. His only repeat item was his favorite, barbecued pork. There were several highlights during the meal, but everyone's favorite was, without a doubt, a certain guest's reaction to finding one of the 6 by 15-foot food tables contained every conceivable variety of dango. Several of the guests, like Kurenai, could swear they saw Anko's eyes tear up as she slowly approached the table, as if she was meeting Kami in person. Humming in a very close second though was Naruto's potentially fatal mistake of actually telling Anko it was his idea to do a dango table before she'd starting indulging in her favorite food in the world. Even years later many would talk about how if it wasn't for the nearby Kurenai and Tsunade, Anko very likely would have literally squeezed the life out of Naruto. She'd hugged him so hard. He did faint though, mainly because Anko had squeezed basically all the air from his lungs. Once he woke up she'd apologize profusely. Unlike the hugging incident a week ago, she didn't care if they told people about this. What no one heard though, was as the lunch feast ended Anko whispered to Naruto. "That's 2 I owe you Naruto-kun," Anko said very slyly. Luckily he was on the edge of the crowd and excused himself to use the restroom. What he actually did was splash some cold water on his face, while using all his willpower to keep from fainting, as the tone of her voice was unmistakable. "Kami, help me, what did I get myself into?" Naruto said. Kurenai approached Anko a moment later after she saw the very brief smirk on Anko's lips, but before she even got a word out, Anko gave her a very sly wink and walked away. Kurenai quietly sighed, subtly shook her head in defeat, and made a decision she'd fought for years. "I give up. You win, Anko." Kurenai looked around for the only person she'd trust with this, and found her. Lunch finally ended and afterward everyone chatted a while. Naruto walked around and was actually amazed that there wasn't a morsel of food left on any table, then he happened to see a certain friend sitting very relaxed in one of his big chairs when it hit him. "He's been sitting there for 20 minutes and I haven't heard a single crunch, looks like Chaoji finally reached his limit." Naruto thought and laughed quietly. Not wanting to interrupt anyone, Naruto waved over an attractive brunette house girl his age, currently working in the kitchen for the party, and had her tell the staff to wait until the guests went into the main hall before they came in to clean up, then he went back to sit and talk with his friends. 2 o'clock finally came around and everyone was finally up and mobile again, so with a huge smile on his face, Naruto called everyone into the main hall. Some guests looked around at details they'd missed the first time, or things they really liked. It was time to open his housewarming gifts. Everyone gathered around the present stacked by the currently unlit fireplace. Naruto sat in the only chair near it with an ear-to-ear grin. "Who's first?" Naruto almost squealed almost. "The best of course." Neji said in the tone he used to use that Naruto hated, but it was done in a friendly way this time. Neji and Hiashi stepped up and Neji handed Naruto their gift. "I never properly thanked you what you did for me, but I believe this will do." Naruto unwrapped the box and opened it, his eyes almost bugged out at what he saw. He lifted out a book on the chakra points of the body and held up for all to see. "You can't see them as we can, but this should prove very useful. It's from our family library," Neji said. Naruto thanked them and bowed. Me next," a girl squealed. Naruto turned to the source and smiled. "What did you get me for my new house, Hanabi-chan?" Naruto said and smiled at her. Hanabi's face turned pink and she wobbled slightly, so Hinata stepped close, held her shoulders to steady her little sister, and smiled. Naruto opened it and smiled even bigger. "To be the best Hokage you have to know the best Taijutsu," Hanabi said proudly, which got quiet laughter from many of them. "Thank you Hanabi-chan, this book about your gentle fist style will go great with Neji's gift." Naruto gave her a bow, then leaned down and lightly kissed her forehead. "Naruto-kun." Hanabi reached up and touched her forehead. "Kissed me," Hanabi said, turned bright red and fainted. After Hanabi was carried away, to everyone's amusement, Sakura and her mother stepped up with their gift retrieved from the stack. Sakura had helped stack them and knew exactly where her gift was. Naruto opened the rather large box and his jaw dropped. After a moment of stunned silence, Naruto looked at the pink-haired mother and daughter. "I hope this gift will in some small way make up for my past misdeeds, Naruto-sama." The pink-haired mother bowed as respectfully as she can, her heart and soul put into it. Sakura bowed. "Please forgive me also, Naruto-sama." The whole room was suddenly dead quiet, having just heard how Sakura referred to Naruto. The box contained a set of 14 very expensive and ornately custom painted to fit Naruto's style, ramen bowls. "Sakura-chan, Sakari-chan. An. Sakari. Bloom, please, it's okay, I forgive you," Naruto said. Both stood, smiled at Naruto very warmly, blushed slightly, then thanked him and quickly stepped aside. Even splitting the price between them, the set of ramen bowls had taken a huge chunk out of both their life savings, half of Sakura's and a third of Sakari's, but they didn't care. They were going to wipe the slate clean with Naruto and give him the proper friendship and respect they should have been doing his entire life, instead of judging him so quickly. Sakura was satisfied that she'd made up with Naruto for everything she'd done to him. Sakari was too until she heard a voice from deep within her mind, she hadn't heard it in 19 years. "It's not enough," the female voice said. Sakari tensed up a little. "No, it can't be you." Sakari thought as a woman appeared in her mind, 2 words tattooed on her forehead. The woman smiled and disappeared from her mind. All the gifts were very nice and reflected each giver's individual relationship with Naruto. The best though was the final gift, and it was from the most unexpected of people, Gaara. When he opened the box, Naruto was confused. Inside it was a flat brick of what looked and felt like sandstone. It was 3 inches thick, 8 inches wide, 10 inches long, and on the top, inside an engraved 6-inch circle was the kanji for sand. "I don't understand," Naruto said nervously, but politely. "Who are your most precious people?" Gaara said emotionlessly. "What my little brother is getting to in his own way is that this is a very special stone. First let me show you what it does," Temari said, looked around, then smiled mischievously. "Hey Ed, yeah, you with the great rack." Naruto blushed slightly. With a big smile, Tayuya moved close to them. "Tayuya, touch the stone and put some chakra into it," Temari said. Tayuya did so. She'd gotten very close to the Wind Mistress earlier that day after she found out they were similar in many ways. "Okay Naruto, now set it down," Temari said. Naruto looked around a moment, then got up, walked to the coffee table and set it down so everyone could see it. Temari stepped up to Tayuya and whispered in her ear a moment. Tayuya looked at her new best friend, shrugged and headed out of the room. "Where's Tayuya going?" Naruto said, confused. "It's part of the demonstration, give her a minute." Temari waited until she heard a door close. "Okay Naruto, now make these seals." She showed him a series of one-handed signs. "Gather a small amount of chakra, picture her in your mind and call her name." Naruto nodded, closed his eyes for a moment to focus himself, opened his eyes with determination on his face to get this right the first time. "Here goes," Naruto said, raised his right hand and flashed through the one-handed seals almost perfectly. Tayuya. Inside the circle on the brick, sand seemed to rise up from within it, and in a matter of seconds a very realistic 8-inch sand statue of Tayuya was there. Everyone gasped in surprise, even Hiashi is so impressed that it showed on his normally emotionless face. About 5 seconds later everyone's jaw hit the floor as it moved, though it didn't leave the circle. Moving isn't quite accurate, it did an extremely erotic but brief dance, the highlight of which was the Tayuya image, shook her huge freests. The second the dancing started, the younger kids had their eyes covered by a parent or adult. Namely Hanabi and Kinohimaru. Finishing the dance, which left Naruto red-faced, it started walking in place. "So what happened?" Tayuya said as she entered the room. Everyone turned her, their expression made her stop. Some noticed the sand, Tayuya did too. "It's mimicking her," Kiba yelled. "Tayuya, come here, you have to see this," a still slightly embarrassed Naruto said. Tayuya walked over to the table, the people around Naruto moved aside so Tayuya could see the small sand clone. "So why is everyone looking at me like?" Tayuya stopped when she saw her little sand clone on the brick. She raised then lowered one, the other, then both arms, even shook her head to wave her long red hair, and was amazed to see that the small sand clone of her did exactly what she did. "That's fucking incredible." Tayuya yelled, then slapped her hands over her mouth, her face red from embarrassment at swearing so loud in front of everyone, especially 2 little kids, when she'd promised herself she wouldn't do that to Naruto. "I'm sorry Naruto, I didn't mean to." Everyone laughed, including Naruto. He composed himself for a moment when he saw her reaction. "It's okay Tayuya, it was an accident and understandable." He hugged her gently, let her know he wasn't mad at her for her slip. "Wait a second." Tayuya turned and glared at Temari. "You mean you all saw what I did in there?" "Temari, you by." Tayuya caught herself this time, but was very angry. "I'll get you for this, blondie," Tayuya said as she stared daggers at Temari, who just smiled back at her and acted innocent. Kiba and Kankuro laughed at the 2 most buxom girls there, but only Kiba stared at both. "And you yell at me for doing this stuff, Temari? You're worse than me," Kankuro said, very amused and proud at what his sister did. "Shut it," Temari snapped at Kiba and her little brother. Kiba stopped, but Kankuro kept laughing. "Excuse me a moment Naruto," Temari said before she grabbed Kankuro's collar and dragged him into the nearby bedroom and shut the door. "Gaara, will this work for anyone?" Naruto said. Gaara nodded. "Have anyone you want put some chakra into it and you can check on them no matter where they are." "Do I dispel it like I would a shadow clone?" Naruto said. "Hi, just will it to stop or call another name to see someone else," Gaara said in his normal monotone voice. "That's incredible Gaara, did you do this? Will this work for anyone or just me? I wouldn't want someone to take this and use it to hurt someone I care about," Naruto said nervously. "Only for you Naruto," Shikaku made sure of that. Everyone nearby suddenly went silent. Information Naruto gained from fusing with kyubi suddenly appeared in his mind. "Ah, I see," Naruto said as understanding appeared on his face. Everyone else was still confused. "I can't really explain it, but basically it's because Gaara has, and I did have, a tail demon sealed inside us." Everyone nodded. A scream suddenly reverberated throughout the room, everyone turned in the direction Temari dragged her brother. Temari suddenly opened the door and walked out, a cruel smile in her face. Tsunade-sama, my brother could use some medical attention. You didn't break anything, did you? Naruto asked her nervously. Temari stopped. Break? Temari smiled and cracks her knuckles. No, definitely bruised, but nothing was broken. Tsunade crossed the hall to the room where Kankuro was, stopped at the doorway, and suddenly turned back to face them. Temari. Tsunade yelled. Temari giggled. He's had that coming for a couple weeks, this just gave me a reason. Both? Tsunade asked, curious but still annoyed. Temari nodded, smiled and loosened up her fingers like she just squeezed something hard. He's lucky he's your brother, I'd hate to see what you do to an enemy. Tsunade said. Everyone looked at Temari nervously while Tsunade entered the room and shut the door. Not wanting to think about what he's pretty sure she did to him, Naruto changed the topic of conversion. Okay everyone, before we get to my surprises I need to talk to Gaara privately. I wanna thank everyone for the great presents, please go out back and we'll join you in a few minutes. Everyone nodded and after a few people hugged him, they all left the room towards the back door. Behind the house, 16 minutes later. Come on Tayuya, you know you thought that was funny and don't even try to deny that you'd do the same thing. Tsunade told Tayuya in a stern voice. Alright, you're right and I wasn't embarrassed, I'd do that again right here in front of everyone, especially for Naruto-kun. Tayuya smirked slyly. I'm just upset I wasn't in on it, that's all. Tsunade-sama, you know how I feel about Naruto-kun, I'd do anything for him, even give my life. It's not that I didn't enjoy making him blush, but Temari used me like he used to. Tayuya said sadly. That's what upset me. I respect Temari, but… Okay Tayuya, I understand. I'll go talk to Temari. Tsunade said. Thank you Tsunade-sama. Tayuya said. Tsunade walked over to Temari as she verbally thrashed Kiba for his comments about what happened, Kankuro just stood there humble and quiet. Tsunade saved a grateful Kiba from further abuse. Before she took Temari to Tayuya, Tsunade briefly explained some things about Tayuya that Temari didn't know. Temari held her composure until Tsunade took her back, she stood in front of the equally endowed redhead, her back to everyone so they couldn't see her face. I'm sorry Tayuya, I didn't understand your situation. Temari said with sincerity and humility, something very few had ever seen from her. Friends don't do that to each other and I deeply apologize for what I did. Temari bowed her head slightly and looked at the ground. Had I known your history, I would have told you my whole plan instead of using you like that. I've never really had a best friend, much less as beautiful and fun to be with as you are. Do you forgive me? Tayuya smiled. Tsunade-sama pointed out to me a few minutes ago that I'd have done the same thing. I was just upset you didn't let me in on the prank instead of using me like a tool, like he did. Temari flinched. I forgive you Temari, but you owe me big for this. Temari's smile faded and she swallowed nervously. Hi, Tayuya. Temari nodded. Tsunade smiled. Now with that settled, you two girls go have fun. Tsunade said. Temari and Tayuya smiled at Tsunade. Before you go Temari, I need to tell you, as the Hokage, what you did to Kankuro in there was a little beyond what's acceptable here, especially at Naruto's housewarming party. Tsunade said seriously. Temari's confidence took a dramatic nosedive as Tsunade's words sink in. And although it was technically family business, you should have handled it better. If you'd squeezed any harder you might have been at Anbu headquarters with Ibiki right now, instead of Naruto's party with me. Tsunade said seriously. Temari nodded. Dear Kami, please don't let me have ruined this. Temari thought. It came close to being disrespectful to Naruto. If he wasn't so forgiving towards his friends, you would have insulted Naruto as your host and me as his friend, his Hokage. Tsunade looked right into Temari's eyes. And his godmother. Temari swallowed hard and got very worried she'd offended the one woman in the world she truly respected and admired. I would have been personally dishonored and would have taken immediate action against you with everything I have. Am I being perfectly clear Temari? Tsunade said with a very low growl in her voice. Temari bowed with as much respect as she could and didn't care who watched. This is just between us and is never to be repeated, as far as anyone is concerned this conversation never happened. Tsunade's face softened. Let's wrap this up before we spoil the mood. I consider the subject closed and forgotten. Tsunade said and smiled. I'm sorry Tsunade-sama, my temper got away from me. I promise you it won't happen again. Temari said sincerely. However, before they could rejoin the crowd, Naruto and Gaara came out, the red-haired Sannin found and joined his siblings, both of which were even quieter than Gaara usually was, a fact he noticed immediately. Okay everyone. I have a couple things planned I hope you'll all enjoy. Before I tell you though, everyone needs to change into the other clothes they brought, I'd hate for you to ruin your good clothes. Everyone talked nervously, but excitedly among themselves. Naruto looked out at his new family and smiled happily. Before we do that though, I have a surprise for some of you. Would Gaara, Shino, Tenten, Sakura, Hanabi, and last but definitely not least, Tayuya. Come over here please. Despite the order they were called, Hanabi is the first to Naruto and hugged him excitedly. If you want your present Hanabi-chan, I'll need my arms. Naruto said and smiled at the girl. Hanabi released him and blushed slightly. Naruto reached into a pocket, removed a scroll, unrolled and laid it on the ground, while everyone he named looked at him curiously. Naruto did a series of hand signs and touched the kanji on it, which unsealed the contents of the scroll with a puff of smoke. When it cleared a moment later, there were 6 wrapped boxes of various shapes and sizes on the ground. Naruto rolled up and pocketed the scroll. Shino and Gaara stood there emotionless. Sakura smiled happily, while Tenten and Hanabi bounced up and down lightly and struggled to hold in their happiness. If not for the size difference, you'd never know Tenten was 3 years older than Hanabi. By the way, both giggled so happily. Tayuya, to Naruto's slight confusion, just stood there and stared at him in total disbelief, as if this wasn't really happening to her. Since it's late April and I just back last week, I missed something important, your birthdays. Naruto said with a big foxy grin. I helped him, Sakura, he wanted to surprise you. Tsunade said with a smile. Sakura turned to her sensei. I helped too, Sakura-chan. Hinata said a little meekly. Sakura turned quickly toward Hinata, surprised for a moment that her friend could be so sneaky. Sakura smiled and gave Hinata a little bow. Naruto picked up a box. First, I have a present for my demon brother. Gaara smirked nautically, then stepped up and accepted the gift. Go ahead and open it. Naruto said. Gaara opened it and removed a scroll, which he opened and read. A moment later, Gaara smiled. Thank you, Naruto, you never fail to amaze me. What's on it? Kankuro asked loudly and got a light slap to the back of his head from Temari. Gaara looked at his siblings. It's 3 new Sanjutsu. Cool. Kankuro yelled, which earned him another slap to the back of his head from Temari. Naruto picked up another present. Shino. In his usual quiet manner, the bug user stepped up, accepted his present and opened it. Inside was a large scroll. Shino looked at Naruto and raised his eyebrows. Naruto knew that was Shino talk for a very happily asked, is this what I think it is? Naruto smiled. I talked to your parents already. Since you don't have one yet and I sure can't use it, I want you to have this, Shino. It was just collecting dust in the library. Shino put the box down and carefully removed the large scroll, sat it on the ground, unrolled it from both ends and scanned it quickly. I know what that is. Koba yelled to his teammate. It's a summoning contract, you lucky dog. Akamaru barked in agreement with his master. We could use the extra power. Which summon clan is it, Shino? Kiba said. Annealed Shino's smile is hidden by his collar. Beetles. Shino said in his rare monotone voice. He took out his kunai, cut his right thumb, then smeared the blood on the other 4 fingertips of his hand, signed the summon contract with his fingerprints, then closed it and put it in his coat. Thank you, Naruto. Shino said emotionlessly. You'll have to summon one later and introduce your new friends to your teammates. Shino gave a nod to Kiba and stepped back for the next person. Tenten looked at the other boxes, quickly found her name, and pouted. Sorry Tenten, I didn't get you a summon contract. But if I find any more I'll let you know, maybe I'll find one for you. Tenten smiled and bowed. But I did get you something I think you like just as much. Naruto held Tenten's gift out for her, but before she could even reach for it, she suddenly froze and her head perked up, as if she heard something. What is it, Tenten, is something wrong? Naruto said. A huge smile crossed her face that was almost sexual in intensity, before she took it. Naruto crossed his arms in front of his chest and pouted. You know what it is, don't you? Tenten nodded. How? Naruto said. I heard them touch. Tenten said casually. The birthday guests, as well as Naruto, all looked at Tenten with a didn't hear anything look of confusion. Tenten tore through the wrapping and opened her box like a little kid. Kunai, I knew it. Tenten squealed very happily before she glumped Naruto. Everyone either smiled or laughed at the childlike reaction of the teen weapon mistress. Luckily for Naruto, Sakura pulled Tenten off him. How did you do that, Tenten? Naruto said, as curious as everyone else. I don't know, Naruto, I just heard him touch. I'd know the sound of metal touching in my sleep. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya. When he glanced back, she smirked too subtly for anyone but Jiraiya to detect. Once they regained their composure, Tenten took a better look at her gift. It was 2 kunai, but the blades are 4 inches longer than normal kunai and they're a blue-tinted silver color, a metal Tenten didn't recognize. She then saw that both had a lightning symbol on the base of the blade and halfway down the blade was another symbol, but each was different. Tenten lifted one out and was amazed at how light it was, then saw the scroll along the side of the box. What's the scroll for, Naruto? I know how to use kunai. Naruto smiled. Not these, you don't. Tenten looked at Naruto confused. Put it back in the box and take out the scroll. Naruto said Ansmold. She did as told, opened it to see what it said. After she read the scroll, she slowly lowered it, a look of disbelief and amazement on her face. She tried to talk but only ended up looking like a fish out of water. Naruto smiled at her. I know you have a rare elemental affinity Tenten, only FWW other people in the village have a lighting affinity, and only one is a jounin, so I know how much you've wanted to master it, but can't find anyone to teach you. Well, I just solved both problems for you. And to help you is your new sensei. Tsunade interrupted. Everyone suddenly looked at the blonde Sannin. Tsunade continued. But that scroll also HSS instructions for a very special style of taijutsu that will rid you of your weakness. Tenten blushed in shame and looked at the ground when her idol mentioned her only weakness, her taijutsu. But it'll do a lot more at the higher levels. Tsunade said. Tenten looked at Tsunade with hope in her eyes. It might even make you more powerful than me someday. Tsunade said. Tenten gasped in shock, compassed herself quickly, and bowed, she literally folded in half. I'd be most honored to train under you Tsunade-sensei. Tenten said, stepped up to Naruto and hugs him tightly. As she stood next to Naruto, Tsunade was the only person to hear what Tenten whispered in Naruto's ear that turned his face bright red. Tenten. Naruto almost yelled as he tried to push down his embarrassment. She smiled at him, blushed brightly, and stepped away. Tsunade smirked and held in her laughter. Tsunade saw Sakura about to ask a question, caught her glance and shook her head slightly, which silently told the pink-haired Kunoichi don't ask. Sakura had a basic idea of what Tenten probably said, but kept quiet and smirked. Despite her new respect for Naruto, among other more intense feelings, she had no problem watching him squirm from embarrassment and held in her laughter so as not to make it worse for him. Besides, there was still her present. Everyone watched, smiled and waited for their host to compose himself again. Naruto glanced at Tenten and questioned her with his eyes. When she nodded subtly back, he let out small sigh of defeat and returned her subtle nod, which made her smile. I'm either the luckiest guy in the world or I'm cursed. Naruto thought as he tried to adjust to all the attention he'd gotten from women since he got back. This has to be Kyubi's doing, as revenge for being locked up inside me all those years. Naruto thought. Sakura. She squealed happily, which made Naruto flinch slightly. He knew this would probably be a repeat of Tenten glazed at her quickly and knew Taiyuya was still coming. Dread filled him at how she was gonna react to her gift. I didn't think this all the way through. Naruto bled. Your turn Sakura. She stepped up and took her gift from him. Please don't embarrass me Sakura. He whispered to her as he handed over her gift. She smirked at him and whispered back. I'll try, but no promises. Naruto sighed quietly in defeat, now fully aware that he was in for a long day. Sakura stepped back and opened her small box, not sure what it was based on the previous gift she's seen. It can't be a scroll, the box is too small, and he wouldn't dare get me one of those itchy paradise books Kakashi-sensei is always reading. So what can it be? Open it and find out. Inner Sakura screamed at her. Sakura removed the wrapping and saw a hinged box she instantly knew was made from a cherry blossom tree and had several pink jewels on it. Everyone looked at Naruto and wondered what was in the beautiful little box. Suddenly thinking this may have a wedding ring in it, Sakura got very nervous, as did much of the crowd. Many of them looked at Sakura's mother Sakari for her reaction. Sakura nervously opened the small box, her eyes suddenly got very big and seemed to sparkle for a moment before all the color drains from her face. Everyone, especially Naruto, got very nervous at her reaction. Sakura looked up at Naruto, her green eyes as big as saucers. Where did you find this Naruto? That's the last thing Sakura said before she collapsed to the ground. She'd fainted from shock, the now closed box clenched tight in her right hand. Sakura. Sakari screamed and ran up to her daughter. Tsunade stepped up before anyone could say anything. It's alright everyone, I'll take care of her. You want me to carry her inside Sakari, or do you want to? I will Tsunade-sama. Sakari said and scooped up her daughter bridal style. Sakura can tell you later if she wants to. Tsunade said and got a nod from everyone. Meanwhile, please continue the party Naruto. Naruto nodded and turned to his next birthday girl. Your turn Hanabi-chan. The worried Hanabi stepped up to Naruto. Will Sakura-chan be okay Naruto-kun? She's okay Hanabi-chan, she was just so happy she fainted, that's all. Naruto said. Hanabi smiled up at him happily. She knew Naruto would never hurt his friends. I heard some things about you Hanabi like that you'll be graduating from the academy soon, you'll be a great kunoichi like your sister Hinata. Naruto said. Hanabi nodded and smiled happily. So I got you something to help you. He handed her a familiar shaped box that she opened and hoped it's what she thought. Is this a new jutsu scroll Naruto-kun? Naruto nodded and smiled. Hanabi dropped the box, opened the scroll, excitedly read it, then looked up at Naruto with a huge smile on her face. My first water jutsu. Suddenly Naruto staggered back a few steps, a very happy girl wrapped tightly around him, her arms and legs tried to crush his neck and waist. Luckily, he tensed up at the last second. Everyone laughed, especially Hinata, who giggled madly at her little sister wrapped around a very embarrassed Naruto. Would somebody help me please? Naruto said. I don't think we're strong enough Naruto, I guess you're stuck with her. Tenten said. Naruto glared at the giggling Tenten. He looked out in the crowd at the one person he hoped would help him. Hanabi let him go, you're embarrassing our host. A male voice commanded. Hanabi's head snapped up. She dropped off Naruto and blushed. I'm sorry Naruto-sama, I apologize for embarrassing you. Hanabi said before she bowed low, I'm sorry father, it will not happen again. Hanabi said to Hiashi and bowed again. It's okay Hanabi, really. Hiashi, don't punish her for this. Naruto said. Hanabi looked at her father. Hiashi's face was serious and stern, then he smirked and bowed slightly. Hanabi smiled, happy she wasn't in trouble, she knew how strict her father was about things like this. Go on Hanabi, it's okay. Naruto said. Hi, Naruto-kun. Hanabi walked over to her father and respectfully bowed to him. Naruto smiled when Hiashi smirked at him amused. So he does have a sense of humor. Naruto thought. The water jutsu he gave her was a genin level jutsu, but with her Byakugan, it'll give her an edge against most opponents, once she mastered it. Naruto suddenly recalled something felt strange when she was wrapped around him, and Hinata's hug from before was similar, but he dismissed the thought. No, I've just been hugged too much today, my mind is playing tricks on me. Naruto thought. Hinata watched Naruto and smiled when she saw his expression change for a moment, like he was in thought, saw him look at Hanabi curiously, then at her for a second, before he shook his head slyly and apparently dismissed it. Does he know? Hinata thought worriedly. She tapped Hanabi's shoulder. When Hanabi looked up at her big sister she saw the we have to talk later look in her eyes, and nodded subtly. Naruto got the last gift and handed out for the final birthday girl. Tayuya. No, I can't. I'm not worth Tayuya said. Tayuya please take it. With everything you've been through you deserve to be happy. Naruto held out her gift again and smiled. Are you sure Naruto I tried to kai Tayuya said nervously. Please Tayuya, take it, I want you to have this. Naruto insisted. You're sure Tayuya looked out into the crowd at Temari, her new best friend, who nodded and smiled, okay. Thank you Naruto. Tayuya smiled a little, then unwrapped it, lifted the top, and inside she saw a scroll. Look underneath it. Naruto said and smiled. She lifted the scroll and see 2 cards, tucked the scroll under her left arm, held the box, read them and looked at Naruto confused. Happy birthday Tayuya. Tomorrow I'm taking you to those 2 stores and I'm getting you new clothes, a new weapon, and then you're moving in here. I won't have my friends living in a cheap hotel guarded by Anbu 24 hours a day. Naruto said. Tayuya looked at him, stunned. I've already asked Bachan welcome home. Tayuya dropped the box, cards and scroll, rushed in and hugged Naruto as hard as she could, tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. A minute later Naruto is suddenly the victim of a group hug, Tenten and Hanabi joined in, the rest of the crowd came up to congratulate Tayuya. Temari picked up the dropped scroll and cards. You forgot to check the scroll read. Temari said and smirked. Tayuya broke away for a moment and read the scroll. But I can't use this, I have to play a. Trust me you can use the jutsu on that scroll I know from experience that attack is perfect for you. Naruto said and smirked. Don't worry Red, while I'm here in the village I'll help you get started, Tsunade-sama will help you after that since I'll only be here a few times a month on diplomatic missions for Gaara. My lil bro is the Kazekage after all. Thanks Temari. Tayuya said. I better come along tomorrow, I don't think Naruto has the fashion sense for dressing kunoichis like us. Until today all he wore was an ugly orange jumpsuit. Temari said. Naruto glared at Temari. I heard that Temari. Temari and Tayuya laughed. Tsunade and a still slightly light-headed Sakura followed closely by her mother, come out of the house now. Naruto excused himself and ran to her. Are you okay Sakura-chan? I didn't think you'd act. Naruto was cut off when Sakura glumped him, the smile on her face at least ear to ear. Sakura broke the hug, bent Naruto back, and planted a long kiss on his lips so hot you could almost smell the smoke. Sakura dropped the red-faced Naruto to the ground and walked back to the stunned crowd with a huge smile of satisfaction on her face, she left him laid there twitching as blood ran from his nose. Tsunade and Sakari looked at each other, then burst out laughing. It took Naruto about 5 minutes before he could form full sentences again, and another 4 minutes before his blush faded. Several people, during and after Sakura's kiss, looked at Hinata and were surprised to see that not only wasn't she mad, but actually smiled. About 10 minutes later everyone had chatted. Tsunade, Sakari and Sakura got caught up on what they missed while inside the house, making sure Sakura was okay. That sure was interesting. I'm happy you all like your presents. Since I was gone for 3 years I missed everyone getting stronger and I don't know what you can do now, so to fix that, we're gonna have some friendly sparring matches. Naruto said. Alright. Kiba yelled, followed by a loud bark from Akamaru and cheers from several people. Sasuke even smiled at the thought of testing himself against many of the people here. I know many of you aren't trained ninjas, so you don't have to fight. I want everyone who's going to be fighting to go inside and change clothes. Naruto turned to the adults and gave them I'm not gonna budge on this look. That means you too Tsunade. This is my party and Hokage or not, you're gonna join us, got it? Tsunade crosses her arms over her chest and looked him right in the eyes with one of her most withering glares and was amazing to see him glare back just as fiercely. The brat has courage, I'll give him that. Oh what the hell, it could be fun. Okay Naruto, I'll do it on one condition though, and this is not negotiable. The tone in her voice told him and everyone there that this will get serious if he even tried to argue with her. I'll only fight you. Tsunade pointed to Naruto. Unlike everyone here Naruto, you're special. You're the only person here that could honestly beat me in a serious fight. Only a few people here know what you're really capable of now. So if I have to fight someone, even in a friendly spar, you're the only person here I'd be comfortable losing to if that happened. I'm the Hokage, how would it look if I lost to someone I'm supposed to command? I'd lose respect. Understand? Naruto nodded. Thank you Tsunade-chan. Naruto hugged Tsunade, not realizing what he called her. Did he just call me Tsunade-chan? Tsunade's heart beat faster and a certain part of her body heated up. She returned the hug and tried to suppress what she felt before Naruto detected it. Everyone had been given separate rooms to change in, with a few exceptions. Most obvious was the Hyuga sisters, as there would be no problem if they changed in front of each other. Because of this the talking was minimal, if any, so there was no need for any sound seals for privacy. There was a room with a sound seal however, and it was cast by Hinata Hyuga. Though not restricted and mainly used by Jounin, it was a jutsu nobody knew she could do. Are you sure Hinata-nichan? You said the jackets would hide us. Hanabi said nervously. I'm pretty sure Naruto-kun knows Hanabi, I hugged him a few times last week and you hugged him twice earlier. Hinata said. You said Kasan told you even Kurenai couldn't detect the game jutsu. Hanabi said nervously. How could Naruto-kun know? Even father's Byakugan can't see through. Naruto-kun is special, he fused with kyubi remember. Hinata interrupted. Hanabi's eyes got big as saucers. Do you think he'll tell anyone Nichan? I don't want to be called names because we're different. I don't know what I'd do if Naruto-kun hated me because I had Hanabi said and pointed to herself. Hinata knelt down and put her hands on Hanabi's shoulders when she saw her little sister's eyes tear up. Hanabi, do you really think that Naruto-kun cares how his friends look? Hanabi thought about that a moment, then smiled. No, cause he's weird now too, he has fox ears and 9 tails, and everyone still liked him. Can I ask you something important? Of course Hanabi-nichan. Hinata said. Are you gonna marry Naruto-kun and have babies? Hanabi said seriously. Hinata's eyes got big as saucers and she blushed. She knew Hanabi knew about the Clan Restoration Act and that she loved him, but this caught her off guard. Hinata smiled. Hi, I would if Naruto-kun asked me. Hanabi, do you love Naruto-kun too? Hanabi did a quick inhale and looked down at the floor. I liked Konohamaru for a while. I asked you about Naruto-kun, do you love him Hanabi? I won't be mad if you do. We don't keep secrets from each other. Hinata said. Hanabi raised her head as her face turned red. Hi. I feel all warm in my belly and my heart beats faster. Me too, but you're not old enough for that yet, maybe in a few years. Now come on, get your jacket on and let's go out there and see who we're going to spar with. Don't worry Hanabi, this won't be any worse than training with father. When you fight somebody don't hold back, make father proud. Hinata said. And Naruto-kun too, I wanna show him how strong I am. Hanabi said confidently, a big smile on her face. Now in the battle gear that they wore on missions, though Hanabi hadn't actually gone on any missions because she was still in the academy. She was dressed similar to Hinata, sandals, blue pants, Hinata's were black, and of course Hinata's old grey jacket over a black shirt, only the neck showed. Hinata's coat was purple and newer. Hanabi walked down the hallway with Hinata. Nichan, will you help me learn my new water jutsu? You can do 2 already so. Of course I will Hanabi, you only had to ask me. Hinata said. Hanabi smiled and hugged her big sister. Thanks Hinata-nichan. The woman screamed from downstairs. They looked at each other then ran down the hall, down the stairs and across the room to the couch, worried someone was hurt. What happened Sakura-chan? Hinata said, worried. Sakura looked up at them. "Hello Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan. I showed mom what Naruto-kun got me," she screamed and fainted. "Sakura, what's wrong?" Tsunade stopped and sighed. "You showed her and she fainted, right?" "Hi, Tsunade-sensei. I should have prepared her better," Sakura said. "What is it, Sakura-chan?" Hinata said. Sakura opened the box gently and slowly pulled up a shiny metal chain and finally revealed a silver, ruby and diamond cherry blossom tree about 2 inches tall. Hinata and Hanabi gasped in amazement. They'd never seen anything so small, yet so intricately made. It actually looked like a real tree. "It's a family heirloom we thought was lost when mom was little. Ba-chan used to wear it all the time, mom once told me." Mom remembered being told it was very special, but she died before she could tell mom about it and pass it on to her. "Tsunade-sensei told me it was in the Namikaze vault at least 15 years. Sakura said. Tsunade stepped close and used a diagnostic jutsu to check Sakari over, only because of her age, and she wasn't a kunoichi. Tsunade was glad to find the woman in good health and very fit for a civilian. "She's fine, Sakura, just give her some water when she wakes up." Sakura nodded. Within 5 minutes everyone had changed. Tsunade had already, but her outfit change was hardly noticeable, if at all. Her usual worn green jacket, grey shirt, black pants and sandals she always wore. Since there were an even number of shinobi, Naruto had decided to do his own version of the Chunin exam matches, well the first round anyway. Naruto gathered everyone around the couch and coffee table. "Okay, because of time everyone may not get to fight, so to give everyone a chance to have their match, there'll be a time limit of 30 minutes. Several people groaned, disappointed. "As you all know, I'll be fighting Tsunade. I know many of you would love to spar with her, but because she's also the Hokage there are some things she can't risk, even for a friendly sparring match. So I'll have to kick her wrinkled old butt for you," Naruto said and smirked. The air in the room was suddenly very heavy, everyone turned to Tsunade, several gasped in fear at her expression. The silence was broken by Kiba. "Naruto's dead." Many around him nodded, they had no doubt that her match with Naruto would be the best of the day. Nobody mentioned it, but they could swear they heard a low, very primal animal growl from her. Everyone looked at Naruto, they knew that if he wasn't who he was he'd be a bloody stain on the floor right now. They also saw the worried look on Naruto's face. They were right, Naruto was the only person that could refer to Tsunade as old and not need medical attention afterwards. Naruto may have pushed even his legendary luck a little far that time, and it was obvious he knew it. "Anyway," Naruto said nervously. "Let's get to the pairings," he said as he tried to change the mood in the room. "Oh Kami, is she gonna hurt me?" Naruto thought as he drew names. Many of the people called were very happy with their opponent, some weren't, for various reasons. A few didn't react either way. Once he'd paired them up, Naruto drew 2 names and let each choose their opponent. That put the final count at 10 matches. Some of them promised to be very entertaining. Everyone headed outside to the open field known as Training Ground 1. "Okay, just to remind everyone of the rules. This is just for fun, so no attacks or jutsu that could be fatal." "Why did everyone look at me?" Sasuke said, only half serious. "You can still win by knockout or if your opponent gave up. Last, since we're fighting in a limited area, if you leave the training ground for any reason you lose," Naruto said. "A ring out?" Someone asked and got a nod from Naruto. "Almost forgot, if your match ended because of time, we'll decide who won," Naruto said. With everyone in agreement, the first 2 fighters walked to the center of the training ground. First to walk out was an adorable little fireball called Hanabi. She was one of the 2 fighters chosen by her opponent. For Hanabi, this was Konohamaru, her classmate at the academy and grandson of the 3rd Hokage. He walked out, stood 10 feet in front of her and bowed, she returned the bow. Hanabi was pretty happy to be fighting him, she'd been really nervous she'd get chosen to fight one of the older shinobi, but as good as she was for her age, she knew in a real fight with almost everyone there she'd get slaughtered. "Get ready," Naruto said. Konohamaru took the taijutsu stance he'd learned at the academy, although he'd gotten some training by Naruto when he was younger. To no one's surprise, Hanabi dropped into the gentle fist stance used by her clan. They were a little surprised that she didn't activate her Byakugan first, everyone knew she could. Sakura leaned to her left. "Why didn't she activate her Byakugan, Hinata-chan?" The Ashi, who stood behind her, quickly tuned into the conversation, he was also curious as to why she'd hand. Hinata smiled, she knew her father was behind her listening. To prove her skill as a kunoichi and a Hyuga. Inside, Hiashi grinned ear to ear, but his face didn't show even a hint of his feelings. Sakura thought a moment then smirked and whispered to Hinata. "She wants to impress him, doesn't she?" Hinata nodded slightly. "Hanabi has a crush on Naruto." Sakura thought, amused at the effect Naruto had on girls. For a moment Hiashi thought Hinata meant him, but quickly realized who Sakura referred to when the events of the day flashed through his mind. I must have a talk with Hinata and Hanabi tonight, one of my daughters must remain to continue our family bloodline. He thought. Fight! Naruto yelled. Konohamaru rushed in with a flurry of punches and kicks, some showed Naruto's influence, that Hanabi either dodged or blocked with apparent ease. The second he stopped, Hanabi hit him with a palm strike to the chest that knocked him back about 10 feet. Give up, Konohamaru, you can't beat me, and I don't want to hurt you if I don't have to. No. I'll prove myself to everyone and show them I'm gonna be Hokage someday just like my grandpa. Many of the people caught what he almost said, and several hush talks were heard among them. As you wish, but don't expect me to apologize after I make you cry like a baby. Hanabi flashed through 4 hand signs, and the veins around her eyes bulged. Byakugan. Only 4 to activate it, excellent, soon she won't need any, just like Hinata and Neji. Hiashi thought as he put a hand on Hinata's shoulder. This fight is over. Kiba said, many people nodded in agreement. Hanabi glanced at Hinata and smirked. Oh no, she's going to use it on him. Hinata said nervously. Everyone around Hinata suddenly looked at her very curiously, especially Hiashi. She's going to use what on him, Hinata? Hiashi said in a low, but commanding voice. She only told me. Hinata pressed her index fingers together nervously. She's been watching you and Neji and DD developed her own version of the. Hiashi's eyebrows went up when he realized what she was about to say. Hinata felt the pressure in her father's grip on her shoulder increase slightly. You mean she learned it just from watching me and Neji train? Hiashi said. Hi, father. Hinata said. Hiashi didn't know if he should be angry or proud. Let's see it, then I'll decide what to do. Hiashi said to a now very nervous Hinata. Neji also watched intently and activated his Byakugan, which Hiashi noticed and activated his. Even though she'd already seen it, Hinata would have activated hers, but she was far too nervous to even focus her chakra. Everyone around them noticed the 2 Hyuga's eyes change. As Konohamaru charged, Hanabi flashed through a series of hand signs that got a gasp of shock from several people in the crowd that couldn't believe what they saw. It can't be, she's too young. Someone yelled, but nobody paid any attention. As soon as Konohamaru got in range, Hanabi unleashed her version of the Hyuga clan's ultimate attack. Hanabi's storm, 4 trigrams 32 palms. Hanabi screamed at the top of her lungs. 248 1632. Hanabi counted out loud as her hands lashed out at Konohamaru faster than she knew he could follow. And to the amazement of some Chunin, faster than they could follow. Konohamaru stood there a few seconds, utter disbelief on his face, the crowd watched just as stunned, but even that took a close second to what happened next. I love you, Hanabi. Konohamaru said, then fell face first into the dirt, unconscious. Did he say he loved me? Hanabi said before she collapsed. Luckily for her, Hiashi was behind her in an instant and caught her before she hit the ground. Tsunade was there a second later with Konohamaru. The next match will be delayed. Tsunade said matter-of-factly, nobody argued. I have to check him over. Hiashi nodded to her and they went inside, followed by everyone else. When she finished her scan of him and a Byakugan check by Hiashi, Tsunade told everyone he'd be fine, but he wasn't going to be able to do any training for a week to 10 days until his chakra points all opened again. Hanabi's attack had only closed half of them, unlike the full version, but it was all the major chakra points she hit. Hanabi knew exactly what she was doing. Hanabi woke up on the couch, her Byakugan had deactivated when she'd fainted. The first face she saw, much to her horror, was the emotionless face of her father Hiashi. Right away Hanabi started to sweat, she knew one of 2 things was about to happen to her. Her father would be very proud of her for what she'd done on her own. Or she'd be grounded the rest of her natural life and would never see anyone outside the clan compound again. Hiashi glared at her for a full minute to make her squirm, nobody interrupted or said a word. I'm proud of you, Hanabi. He said and suddenly smiled. Hanabi went totally limp on the couch, a huge smile on her face. Everyone laughed at her reaction. A few minutes later both kids were up and walking again. Hanabi bowed thankfully to her father. Konohamaru was a little shaky for a few minutes. Hanabi apologized to him for what she'd done and admitted she'd gone a bit far and used him to show her new jutsu to her father. He was kinda mad at her, but that feeling was obliterated when she told him she's go out with him once to make up for it. Just lunch, I'll pay and don't even try to kiss me, Konohamaru. Hanabi said. Konohamaru nodded and blushed. She liked him, even respected him, and although they were friends she loved teasing him, this just gave her a new weapon to use against him. She'd noticed lately that Mogi seemed to get a little upset when she did. Does Mogi like him? If she does I better not mention he liked me. It was hard enough getting them to like me as Hanabi, not because I'm Hanabi Hyuga. Oh no, I promised I'd go on a date. I hope he'll let me buy him and his friends lunch instead, since they weren't able to come to the party. Hanabi thought. After Konohamaru composed himself and before everyone went back outside for the next match, Hanabi had a private talk with a slightly blushed Konohamaru. After a few minutes he agreed to let Hanabi buy him and his friends lunch instead of a date. She also, rather sadly, told him she was flattered he liked her, but her heart belonged to someone else and they could only be friends. This was a blow to him, but he handled it well. This was nothing compared to how he felt when he lost his grandpa, the third Hokage. What she didn't mention was that she was pretty sure Mogi liked him, but she'd talk to Mogi tomorrow about that. Hanabi thought Mogi reminded her of how Hinata used to act around Naruto-kun, although Mogi didn't faint like Hinata did. With everyone okay, they returned to training ground 1. This was the other choose your opponent match. The drawn name was Ino, and to no one's surprise she chose Sakura. She'd stated very clearly she wanted a rematch from the Chunin exams, as did Sakura. They couldn't let things stand at a draw. They were best friends now, but that wouldn't stop either from giving her all against her favorite friendly rival. Everyone looked forward to the rematch also, especially an almost drooling Kiba. The thought of the Teo Busty Kunoichi fighting almost too much for him to handle. This fact was very obvious to everyone except Konohamaru and Hanabi, but nobody was going to fill them in on why Kiba was so excited about the next match. Especially not after Tsunade and Hiashi passed a quick glare around the room. If asked, they'd say because he loved fights. Nobody there was foolish enough to want the Hokage Tsunade and Hiashi go mad at them. That's like asking to have your life turned into a living hell if you were very lucky. Well, everyone didn't return to the training ground. While Hanabi and Konohamaru had their talk, another was going on, Sakura and Ino. Both girls then talked to Tsunade and made sure nobody overheard them. Nobody saw the two Kunoichi and the Sannin slip out of the room for a moment either. Before the two girls returned, Tsunade had a quick chat with Hiashi, who got his youngest daughter and her friend to stay in the house so they can discuss Hanabi's new jutsu, look around, things like that. It's what he told them anyway. They didn't want to miss the other matches, but Hiashi told them the other matches weren't for their eyes and to drop the subject. Hiashi didn't fully know why. All Tsunade had said was that the other matches just became shinobi only. The way she'd said shinobi only made him very curious, but when the Hokage asked him to keep the kids inside, as a personal favor to her, he wasn't going to refuse. Not just because he respected her, but he was smart enough to know that having the Hokage owe you a personal favor was an opportunity he wasn't going to miss. The potential benefit to his clans, and even his own honor and status, far outweighed anything else. As head of the Hyuga clan, his top priority was to keep the clan strong. Tsunade, even just a month ago, would have never done what she did. Hiashi Hyuga was a hard fast when it came to his clan, and she knew as well as the council how he thought, but since Naruto's return and the whole truth about Naruto revealed, he changed a lot. It wasn't noticeable in public, however. His steel exterior was well polished. What is it about you, Naruto, that makes you so special? Tsunade thought as she walked out to training ground 1. The two young Kunoichi walked out to the center of the training ground and stood only 2 feet apart. You ready to do this, bis? Ino asked with a smile. Show me what you've got, slut. Sakura smiled back. Both bowed respectfully. If anyone had listened they would have been surprised, not by what was said, not even by who said it. The girls' rivalry wasn't a secret, but by the fact that their insults didn't carry even the smallest hint of malice, only respect. What they were going to do would cost both some dignity, but they were willing to pay it for the end result. Naruto turned to Tsunade, who stood next to him. They aren't going to hurt each other, are they, not like they did during their match in the Chunin exams? Tsunade could hear the genuine concern in his voice for their safety. Even in a friendly sparring match, both girls' tempers were well known to flare up out of control. No, Naruto. It'll be a rough match, but nothing worse than what they've done during normal training. They've gotten a lot stronger in the 3 years you were gone. That's what worried me. Naruto said. Tsunade just smiled and let out a quiet sigh. Please be careful, girls. Tsunade thought. Ready, Naruto yelled. Both girls jumped back 10 feet. Fight. Naruto yelled. Sakura quickly made a hand sign everyone recognized instantly. Shadow clone jutsu. A moment later there was 2 puffs of smoke and 3 Sakuras stood there. Sakura-chan can do the shadow clone jutsu? Naruto said, stunned. Hi, Naruto. Tsunade said. And much more. Tsunade thought. She's seen you use it so often to win a battle, so she asked me to teach it to her. She doesn't have your chakra capacity, but her control is perfect, so she doesn't need to use quite as much chakra as you do. You really have gotten stronger, Sakura-chan. Naruto thought. The 2 outside Sakura clones circled out and charged Ino from the sides. Ino just smiled. Once they were close, Ino jumped up, dodged both punches, and did a spinning splits kick that hit the 2 Sakura clones in the face, then landing on her feet and faced the original again. The 2 shadow clones pop off out of existence. Your Taijutsu has really improved, Ino. Sakura said. Ino smiled. Well, I can't exactly use my mind transfer jutsu in the middle of a fight, now can I? All that leaves is weapons and taijutsu, and I always was a nasty piss. Oh, by the way, nice shadow clone, Sakura. Thanks. And Ino gotcha. Sakura said and smiled. Sakura suddenly popped out of the ground behind Ino and grabbed her in a full Nelson that Ino knew she can't break. Because of her special training from Tsunade, Sakura's strength had increased to an incredible degree. She was second in physical strength only to Naruto and Tsunade, and everyone knew it. But hey. Ino struggled for a moment. You sneaky biss, you mean that was a shadow clone the whole time? Ino said stunned. Hi. Sakura said as she clamped the full Nelson a little harder. How the hell did you do that, Sakura? Ino said and grunted slightly. That's my version of a jutsu Kakashi-sensei did to Sasuke in our final exam when we became Team 7. Sakura said. Kakashi and Naruto smirked as they remembered the incident Sakura had just referred to. Sasuke turned to the close by Tsunade, noticeably impressed. Sakura not only learned the shadow clone jutsu, but she combined it with the headhunter jutsu to create her own jutsu. Tsunade smiled when she saw Naruto stared at her with the same look on his face as Sasuke. Aye, she did, Sasuke. Tsunade said proudly. I didn't think that was possible, I really underestimated Sakura. Sasuke said, his statement stunned everyone that heard him actually compliment Sakura's skill. Okay Sakura, I wanted to play a little longer, but if you want to step it up now, that's fine with me, Ino smiled. I learned this from Temari last year, no kunoichi can withstand it. Okami, watch this. Temari said as she held in her laughter. Everyone watched the two kunoichi intently. Temari almost couldn't wait to see what Ino was about to do to Sakura. I almost feel sorry for Sakura almost. A big smile and slight blush appeared on Temari's face. You're bluffing, Ino, your arms are trapped, you can't make a hand sign. Sakura said. Ino laughed. This jutsu I can. Although she knew her life wasn't in any danger and she'd made a special deal with Ino just before this match, Sakura actually got nervous. What did Temari teach her? Sakura thought, then felt Ino's right arm twitching. Sakura looked up and saw Ino doing a series of one-handed signs she's never seen before. Kunoichi's shame. Ino yelled out. Except for Temari, the other kunoichi including Tsunade, all suddenly get extremely curious, but nothing happened right away. The men are just as curious, they all heard Ino say that no kunoichi could withstand it. What's kunoichi's shame, Tsunade-sama, I've never heard of it. Tenten said. I don't know, I've never heard of it either. Tsunade said. This really surprised everyone. Tsunade suddenly recalled something said earlier. What's the jutsu do, Temari? Tsunade say in almost commanding voice. I'll explain it later, Tsunade-sama, I promise. I created it, but Ino mastered it. Please just watch, it should hit Sakura any second. Temari said with a big smile, she hoped she didn't upset Tsunade the way she dodged the question. She didn't lie to her, she would explain the jutsu in detail, since she did create it. She'd only taught it to Ino after they'd had a very stimulating chat and the subject of the unique taijutsu style Ino was creating came up. She'd found it very clever and potentially unstoppable against certain types of opponents. The fact that Ino also had a wind affinity was a bonus and the main reason she taught the jutsu to the younger blonde kunoichi. That, and Temari really liked Ino's personality. Ino was a bit of a biss, but Temari was too, it was part of her charm. Sakura suddenly released Ino, threw her head back and screamed, her whole body went stiff as she shook. There's dust swirling around Sakura-chan's feet. Hinata said. Sakura. Tsunade suddenly screamed, her eyes wide open as her guess on the jutsu's effect is confirmed. Temari laughed as Sakura continued to scream, but it wasn't from pain. Anko, Kurenai and Sakari gasped in shock when they realized what the jutsu did and blushed. Although not a kunoichi, Sakari had some training as a girl and remembered the special code kunoichi live by. Oh my poor Sakura. Sakari said before she fainted. The women, after it was mentioned, looked intently at the dust swirling around Sakura's feet and realized it's actually a small, visible tornado. What made them all gasp in shock was they noticed it was directly between her feet and went all the way up between her legs. After a minute the dust swirl dispersed and Sakura struggled to stay on her feet as she sweated profusely and panted heavily, her face red. A few moments later Sakura regained her balance and rested, bent over, her hands on her knees. Ino stood there and smiled ear to ear, her face bright pink. About a minute later Sakura stood up, her breathing normal now, an almost blissful smile on her face. Temari taught you that, huh? Ino nodded, she knew if she even tried to talk right now she'd laugh her head off. Sakura looked over at Temari and locked eyes with her. I don't know if I should thank her for teaching you that or kill her. Temari suddenly stopped smiling and her face got a little pale. Although her wind attacks were very powerful, Temari knew that if Sakura gets her hands on her, she could very easily become Sakura's bis if she was lucky. She's a good fighter, but a razor-sharp mind told her she's no match for Sakura in a serious hand-to-hand fight. The pink-haired kunoichi could literally knock her head off if she really wanted to. I hope she's joking. Temari thought. Well, Ino, shall we continue? Sakura said and smiled. If you're ready, Sakura. Ino managed to say, her emotions almost back to normal. And Ino, I want to thank you for not taking advantage of the situation. The crowd on her left, Sakura winked slyly at Ino with her right eye. Ino winked back, both knew if this was a real fight that was Ino's only chance to beat her, and 3 years ago, had Ino known that jutsu, she would have charged in and finished Sakura. Sakura rushed at Ino with blinding speed and locked on a front bear hug, then with her head closed whispered in Ino's ear. You're not wearing, are you, Ino? No. Ino whispered back. After a few moments of close body contact, Sakura smirked. Ino, you're such slut. Sakura said playfully, then her expression changed. I'm sorry I have to do this to you, Ino, but I'll make it up to you, I promise. Sakura whispered so only Ino could hear. I'll live and it'll be worth it for his reaction. Ino took a focusing breath. I'm ready, Sakura, do it. Unlike everyone else, Tsunade knew that this wasn't a real sparring match, but a special housewarming gift for Naruto that Sakura and Ino came up with at the last minute. Despite that, and knowing the basic plan for the outcome of the fight, she'd been totally caught off guard by the unusual jutsu Ino had used. Which reminded her to have a talk with the Sand Kunoichi after the match was over. She hated to admit it to herself, but like Jiraiya and Sarutobi the third Hokage did to Naruto's sexy jutsu, that Kunoichi's shame jutsu Temari and Ino knew, once mastered, would defeat her in a single move and leave her helpless. Tsunade glanced over at Sakari and saw her being held up by Am while she recovered from her faint, then nodded her thanks to the girl. Sakura gave Ino a seemingly powerful squeeze, which caused Ino to scream, then suddenly released Ino and grabbed her shoulders. I've waited a long time for this moment, you slut. Sakura yelled before she drove her right knee up between Ino's parted thighs, which lifted her off the ground a good 6 inches. Tsunade could tell that knee was real and had a good amount of power behind it, judging by Ino's reaction. Tsunade reaches out and grabbed Naruto's shoulder with an iron grip. Don't get involved, Naruto. Forget for a minute they're your friends and just enjoy the fight, trust me. The look in her eyes told him she was sincere. He sighed and turned back to watch the girls fight, pushed all his personal feelings aside like Jiraiya taught him to do when he had to do something he didn't want to, like when he killed Itachi. Naruto saw the pure agony on Ino's face and a cruel smile in Sakura's. He knew that look from Sakura very well from personal experience. She's never need him there, which he was grateful for, especially now that she was so strong, even he couldn't withstand an unexpected hit there without folding up. Sakura grabbed the base of Ino's long ponytail in her left hand and lifted her off the ground about 6 inches. You need some humiliation to go with your beating bis. Everyone heard Sakura's statement, a little shocked by how cruel she's being in a friendly sparring match with her best friend. Sakura walked over near the sideline, in front of the crowd, specifically Naruto. If you guys want to see this big-freested slut stripped and beaten, come down here by Naruto. Everyone but Shino, Am's father and Tenten's father, moved down by Naruto. Nobody dared stand in front of Naruto though, they didn't want to risk making Sakura mad, as she was obviously doing this for him. Sakura stood facing them, Ino hung by her ponytail next to her and also faced them, her eyes looked at the ground, not that anyone looked at her eyes. Sakura grabbed Ino's shirt in the center of her ample chest, with a yank ripped it completely off and revealed Ino's bare freests. There was a moment of silence as everyone finally got a look at what Ino had flaunted for years in her tight clothes. It was worth the wait because they were beautiful. Full, round, and as big as melons, an 38E cup with only a little sag from their weight and capped by dark red areola almost 5 inches across and thick nipples about an inch long. Her stomach, what they could see of it, was wrapped in bandages, but many shinobi wore bandages on their body and limbs for extra protection. Sakura turned Ino so they faced each other and with her right fist drove one devastating punch after another straight into Ino's left freest with blinding speed, her big red nipple used as a target. Then Sakura switched hands, held the now heavily sobbing Ino up with her right hand, repeated her action on Ino's other freest, which left both freests covered in bruises. They were nice, weren't they? Sakura asked coyly, saw the look on Naruto's face, but something else about Naruto almost made her break her concentration when she saw the subtle outline in his clothes. Inner Sakura however totally freaked out. The guys nodded absent-mindedly, including Naruto. There was something about watching Sakura and Ino fight, especially since Ino was now topless, but even badly bruised he found her freests amazing. They're as stunning as Taiyuya's, but not nearly as large as the Redeeds. Now that the prelims are over, let's get to the main event, shall we? Sakura said, reached down and grabbed the waistband of Ino's pants. No, please. Ino said quietly. Sakura was honestly amazed Ino was still conscious, forget everything else, she was genuinely impressed by Ino's inner strength. Sorry Ino, but you're in no position to stop me. Please Sakura-chan, don't do it. Sakura caught a subtle undertone in Ino's voice and knew what it meant. On second thought, only one of you deserves the honor, so I'm ending this. Sakura stood Ino on her feet, held her bare shoulders to keep her up, with Ino's back to the crowd. Unseen and unheard by everyone, Sakura had a quick chat with Ino that ended with a slight nod from Ino that looked like her head dropped. Sakura then drove her right knee once again up into Ino's womanhood. The impact not only lifted Ino off her feet, but sent her flying to land spread-eagled on her back just outside of the training grounds border and ended the match with a ring out. The instant Ino hit the ground Tsunade took over. She had Ino scooped up in her arms, bridal style, in 2 seconds. Sakura, Sakari, Temari and Naruto come with me, everyone else stay here, and if I hear even the slightest comment about this from anyone Tsunade's face went absolutely stone cold. They'll have to deal with me. The tone in Tsunade's voice sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Nobody had even the slightest doubt in their mind that if they even attempted to do anything other than what she said it could mean their life if they were very lucky. Even Anko had a very unfamiliar feeling in the pit of her stomach terror. Inside the house Hiashi had felt the immense chakra spike and knew it could only be Tsunade. He silently activated his Byakugan, saw them racing for the house. He quickly deactivated it and made sure he got the kids into another room so the hallway to the bedrooms was clear. Tsunade and company were in Naruto's master bedroom not even a minute later, the door was locked seconds later by Naruto on a command from Tsunade. Outside, Shizune watched everyone closely, her hearing now enhanced to a degree that would impress even a jounin. Shizune knew Tsunade would want to know if anything was said. She knew the 2 civilians didn't feel her chakra rise beyond her official level. She very rarely did it because to reach and maintain this level of concentration put an incredible strain on her, she just hoped they'd return before she reached the limits of her strength. If she didn't have to move she could channel all her chakra into her ears. Even Naruto couldn't sneak up on her right now. She hadn't intended to use her gift, but Tsunade's voice had upset her, and once activated her options were very limited on what she could do. -16 minutes later, outside. Tsunade and Temari walked out the back door, they rejoined the group, and everyone sighed in relief when they saw Tsunade's face, she smiled again, as was Temari. As soon as she was outside Tsunade scanned the group, found who she wanted, and almost showed the shock she felt. Damn it Shizune you didn't have to do that, I must have upset her. I'll make this up to her later. Tsunade thought. Shizune. They locked eyes for a second, Shizune knew Tsunade had asked if she was okay, she nodded, both knew she just needed to rest a few minutes. The few shinobi that watched Shizune until she relaxed, saw her knees almost buckle for a moment before she regained her composure. Go to Naruto's room, talk to Sakari. Tsunade said. Hi, Tsunade equals Sama. Shizune nodded and felt her strength back. She ran off at high speed and disappeared inside the house a moment later. Ino is fine, any other questions or comments I strongly suggest you keep to yourself. And until I say otherwise Tsunade's smile dropped away. That match never happened. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Everyone nodded that they understood, the look on her face was unmistakable, even to AM and her father who ran Naruto's favorite raiment stand. They knew it was a command from the Hokage and a personal threat from Tsunade. Acting as either Tsunade had incredible power, as both, her full power was almost unstoppable if she chose to unleash it on you. Almost as feared as her punches was her Fisher technique, one of her 2 signature attacks. With a stomp of her foot she could split the ground open enough to bury you alive, and that was with a small amount of chakra. Nobody wanted to see what a full power stomp could do, but many figured she could destroy the entire village with one stomp and bring down the Hokage monument on top of them. Before the mood is ruined let's get to the next match, a little fun is called for I think. Who's up next Naruto? Tsunade said. Naruto scrunched up his face in thought as he looked around the crowd at the people that were picked to have matches, suddenly stopped with a big smile. Tsunade followed Naruto's gaze and smiled. Temari, it's your turn. Temari looked at the grinning boy, then Tsunade, they were smiling slyly. Temari get out there, Shikamaru I want to talk to you. Tsunade said with a smile she saw made Temari very nervous. Hi, Tsunade-sama. Temari said and silently asked Tsunade what are you gonna do to me? With her eyes. Shikamaru just raised an eyebrow and walked casually to Tsunade, who took him aside for a private chat, her back to everyone. A minute later everyone heard Shikamaru's signature sigh and troublesome. What they missed was both his eyebrows briefly leapt to the top of his forehead in surprise, as well as the very unusual and brief smile on his face. Out in the center of training ground 1, Tamari stood there leaned on her giant fan as she tried to hide her nervousness and failage. Why do I get the feeling if he catches me in that damn shadow potion just of his, I won't get off as easy as I did 3 years ago. Tamari noted the position of the sun above and slightly behind her, which cast a small shadow forward, as well as the trees near the border of the training ground behind her also cast shadows into training ground 1. The advantage was strongly in Shikamaru's favor. I'm in a lot trouble, I'll have to end this fast. I can't give him a chance to set up any traps. Tamari was one of the best strategists around and was very proud of that, but she knew in her heart that the laziest person she'd ever met in her life made her feel stupid by comparison. Since Suna had surrendered to them after the attack over 3 years ago, when she became the diplomatic messenger between the two villages, she'd played shogi with Shikamaru many times. They were fairly even the first couple months, she even won a few games, but from then on he got better fast, and during the last 2 years, no matter how hard she tried, he destroyed her like a rank amateur. She wasn't even a challenge for him anymore, which bothered her, but made her respect him, though she'd never tell him that. If I'm not a challenge, then why does he still play shogi with me? Tamari thought, confused. Ready, Naruto yelled. Shikamaru took his hands out of his pockets like he usually did. What everyone noticed is that Tamari, unlike her normal tactic, immediately opened her giant fan all the way and got it ready for a big attack. She wasn't gonna play with him, friendly spar or not, she was going for a knockout the second the match started, and everyone knew it. Naruto looked at Tsunade, and she nodded. Naruto quickly stepped up to the border of training ground 1, flashing through a series of hand signs, and reached out his right hand. Barrier seal. There was suddenly a shadow-like barrier around the training ground, but it didn't appear to block anything. It's a security precaution of Minato's to protect the people and property around the area from dangerous or powerful attacks like Tamari is probably about to use. All 4 training grounds have this seal. Tsunade said. Everyone nodded, they knew why it wasn't used until now. Tamari's attacks are wind-based and very destructive as many of them had seen firsthand. The instant Naruto said fight, Tamari leapt back 30 feet with such speed that most of the Chunin couldn't follow her until she stopped. Relentless storm. Tamari yelled at the top of her lungs and swung her giant fan in front of her 12 times, each wave unleashed a visible 50-foot wall of wind as wide as the training ground that literally roared as the first blast sped toward Shikamaru. Everyone watched in awe, even Naruto. They'd never seen this attack before. Everyone watched as Tamari swung her fan side to side, each swing apparently done with everything she had. Naruto had to admit to himself that even he couldn't break through that attack easily, it was at least an A-rank jutsu. When Tamari stopped, she dropped her fan and fell to her knees, sweat poured off her as she panted hard to catch her breath. Where's Shikamaru? Choji screamed, very worried about his friend. Suddenly everyone scanned the area for him nervously. Then silence, the only sound was Tamari's breathing. That was very impressive, Tamari, but it used most of your chakra. A male voice said. It did, but it was worth. Tamari's head whipped to her right, total shock and disbelief on her face. Shikamaru, how did you dodge that? He was in her exact pose. Later, you troublesome woman. Shadow puppet jutsu. Shikamaru said, his shadow stretched to his left and grabbed Tamari's shadow. Ivane watched, stunned, as Shikamaru calmly walked over to where Sakura and Ino had been at the end of their match. Tamari mimicked every move he made, but unlike his shadow possession jutsu, it wasn't like a mirror reflection, she was like his puppet. Tsunade nodded at Shikamaru, then turned to Naruto. You can release the barrier, Naruto, Tamari's finished, the fight is over, but not the match. Naruto was confused, but obeyed. Barrier release. Tamari was really nervous now. Shikamaru, what are you going to? Tamari stopped suddenly, she faced the crowd and couldn't see Shikamaru, but worse, she couldn't move except to talk, which she figured was intentional if Shikamaru had as much control over her body as she figured he did. She'd stopped not because her arms had moved without her, but because they had lifted her shirt up. Take it off. No, Shikamaru, please don't do this to me. Tamari said, fear in her voice. Wait a second, Shikamaru. Tsunade said as Tamari's hands reached the bottom of her fists, part of her flat stomach exposed. Tamari, did you forget what happened earlier? Tamari's heart dropped. No, Tsunade-sama, but isn't there anything else that? Tsunade did a fast glance toward someone else that made Tamari stop. Tamari sighed in defeat, Tsunade had her and she knew it. Everyone. Tsunade said with unquestionable authority. This never happened. Everyone nodded, they knew they couldn't repeat what they're about to see. Shikamaru, continue the show. Tsunade said with a small smirk. Tamari turned red from embarrassment, the only thing that gave her some dignity was that her little brothers Kankuro and Gaara turned their backs so they wouldn't see her stripped. They'd shown their respect for her as her younger brothers. Tamari's arms, against her will, removed her purple shirt and dropped it to the ground that revealed a huge V-neck purple sports bra with black trim. The stretch fabric was thicker than normal, it was obviously custom made. Tamari's face got redder as she was slowly exposed. Yu grinned ear to ear in obviously enjoyment as she watched her friend get humbled this way until she saw Tamari's custom sports bra, and from the strain and bulges she knew Tamari's freests were obviously a lot bigger than they looked under her shirt. Tamari smiled when she saw her friend's smile fade, and when her arms pulled off her custom sports bra and dropped it on her shirt, she smiled bigger. Everyone thought that Tamari and Yu were equal in endowment. Yu thought so too, but Tamari's were bigger, and though more oval than round, Tamari's bottom-heavy freests hung past her navel from the sheer weight. Tamari's areola were reddish-pink color and about 7 inches across. Tamari blushed bright red and it spread down onto her chest. When Tamari felt her hands on her waistband she looked at Tsunade and instantly knew that Tsunade wasn't going to stop Shikamaru. She was happy when she was able to clamp her eyes shut as she felt the last of her modesty slide down her legs, it exposing the patch of very blonde curls above the otherwise smooth skin around the slit between her bare, muscular thighs. "That's enough Shikamaru, let her go," Tsunade said. Tamari's eyes popped open. The instant she was free she yanked up her black skirt and purple panties, grabbed her shirt and sports bra from the ground to cover her chest, and raced into the house, blushed a deep scarlet, her fan still in the training round where she'd knelt. What they didn't see was her face as she ran to the house. As embarrassing as that was, as the Queen Bis of Suna as she often referred to herself, she'd been knocked off her throne and giving a lesson in humility. She had to admit to herself however, part of her enjoyed it. She'd grown up with a little brother that absolutely terrified her as much as the rest of Suna, she never had a chance to be a normal girl. Until that moment nobody had ever seen her naked, she found the experience very liberating. To be admired, even stared at by everyone, she found very exciting. Yu now felt humbled herself and a little aroused. She volunteered to take Tamari's fan to her and comfort the extremely embarrassed San Kanoichi. In just under a minute Yu had Tamari's surprisingly heavy fan and disappeared into the house after her new best friend. In the group, a woman suddenly spoke, but what was said didn't surprise anyone considering how things were going. "I'm sorry Naruto-sama, please forgive me, but I cannot go through with my match for personal reasons. I humbly ask to be excused from participating." Naruto, still stunned from who he just saw nude and how well endowed she really was, came out of his daze enough to answer. He turned to his female guest. "Oh come on Kurenai." Anko interrupted Naruto. "I feel just like you, but the way these matches have gone I run the same risk you could show everyone my freest and beep. So unclimp your legs, get out there, and fight me like the baddest Kanoichi I know you are. Or I can drag you out there by your hair and I guarantee I'll strip you as bare fast naked as the day you were born, spread you wide and give these boys a close look," Anko said very bluntly. Kurenai looked at Anko, absolutely shocked she'd said that to her and in front of everyone. "Enough." Tsunade roared, which made everyone flinch in fear. This got a little out of hand, even beyond what I'll tolerate in the name of fun. "I'm sorry Naruto, but I can't let this degenerate any further so the rest of the matches are cancelled." Many got really depressed, some were relieved they wouldn't have to fight. Sasuke was just mad, he was really anxious for his match with Hinata to see how he compared to a Hyuga and find out how strong she'd gotten. Hinata was absolutely thrilled however, considering how the matches had ended. Except ours Naruto. Everyone looked at Tsunade like she'd gone insane, they all wondered if she was going to continue the very adult theme of the matches. Though many were excited and very curious at the thought of seeing the apparently 32-year-old body and freests of Tsunade, especially Jiraiya. He just hoped his heart would hold out long enough for him to see Tsunade's legendary giant freests in all their naked glory. In all his decades of peeping he'd never managed to see her body. Everyone knew about her special henge, but it actually was what she looked like 20 years ago. She just used her med skills and perfect chakra control to physically change her appearance to a different age. Everyone inside for a 30-minute break, then back out here for the best match of the day. Tsunade said with a very mischievous smile on her face. Everyone gasped in unison as basically the same thought ran through their minds at once. Tsunade and Naruto are going to end up nude. Everyone thought, each of a different Persian depending on who they were. The men thought Tsunade would get stripped, the women Naruto, several of which almost fainted at the thought, everyone blushed bright red. Everyone walked back to the house rather slowly, they were still in shock at what they'd just seen and heard. As soon as they entered they went either to the main hall to let it all soak in, or to the kitchen to restore some strength. Most chose the kitchen as they'd used a lot of energy watching the matches, not to mention how those in them felt. About 10 minutes later everyone was in the main hall with either a drink of some kind, a plate of food, or both. The conversations had finally started just before Hanabi and Konohamaru walked in, followed by Hiashi, Shizune, Temari, Sakura, Sakari and Ino. They now wore a black t-shirt that obviously belonged to Naruto and was rather noticeably snug in places because it wasn't made for her slim and stacked figure. They'd just finished with their tour of the house and met the other small group on the way back. Everyone was careful what they said of course, but Temari was caught off guard and told an excited Hanabi that Shikamaru had beat her with his shadow jutsu and embarrassed her, that's why her face was pink. Some things were unavoidable, even by Tsunade, so when Hanabi saw everyone else, she scanned the room and ran to the person she was looking for. Hanabi knew Temari was too embarrassed to tell her, but she also knew she could always get this person to talk. When Hanabi asked what had happened with her cutest face, Shikamaru kept his calm, his mind raced as only his could, and came up with the most embarrassing, but still safe, thing he could. With a smirk he told her in a loud whisper everyone could hear. Everyone went back to talking, but they were acting, everyone listened intently, ready to react appropriately. I made her spank herself for being rublesome. It was a lie, but he knew Hanabi totally bought it. Temari pictured herself bent over as she spanked her own face and turned red again, which made everyone laugh. Temari looked at Tsunade and bowed her head, ashamed she'd slipped up with Hanabi. Temari looked at Tsunade and slightly asked for forgiveness. Tsunade let Temari off the hook because of her very revealing match with Shikamaru and because that was Temari's first time being exposed to someone, much less everyone she knew, and Tsunade had basically forced it on her. Temari wasn't mad about what happened though, to Tsunade's surprise, and actually thanked Tsunade, and later Shikamaru, because they treated her like one of the girls, something she wasn't used to even though she'd spent half of her time in Konoha and gone on the occasional shopping trip and various parties over the last 3 years. She'd never fully relaxed or opened up to someone, more from a lack of experience than anything else. Tsunade understood that, considering who her family was. During the rest of the 30 minutes everyone noticed the dramatic change in Temari. Temari was a lot friendlier and more fun to be around. She even apologized for her fashion comment to Naruto earlier that day and told him she was still going with him and Tayuyu tomorrow, but she wouldn't be an uptight bis anymore. Though the part about her being an uptight bis she said quietly so she wasn't heard by certain young ears. And much to everyone's entertainment, she walked over to Shikamaru, grabbed his collar with both hands, yanked him up out of his chair into a smoldering kiss on the lips, then dropped him back in his chair, red-faced and unconscious. "Let's see how you like it, Spanky boy," Temari said with a huge smile of satisfaction on her face. Everyone laughed at her payback, especially Hanabi who knew he called girls troublesome, but not in a mean way. The other 2 matches were carefully edited and relayed to Hanabi and Konohamaru, both pouted when they were told the other matches had been cancelled, except for Hanabi, who had reacted like Hinata when her match with Sasuke was cancelled, hugged her big sister tight. Both were thrilled to hear that Naruto and Tsunade were still going to fight. That was short-lived as they were told they wouldn't get to see it. Their sad little faces tugged at his heart. Naruto told them to make it up, had let them train here at the Namikaze compound anytime they wanted. And Hinata-chan too. He'd said to Hanabi soon afterward. That put a big smile on all 3 faces, the third being Hinata herself. And as if he hadn't been through quite enough yet, both Hyuga girls took a cheek and thanked him at the same time. Even the usually stone-faced Hiashi had to smirk at that. Tsunade leaned against the wall red-faced as she laughed, her 2 waist-length blonde ponytails hung in front of her and waved wildly. Unable to resist the temptation, Sakura and Ino walked over to Naruto and smiled slyly. Naruto tried his best to politely stop them, he even begged for help, but nobody would lift a finger. They finally trapped him against the wall, and he once again fell victim to the dreaded double-cheek kiss. Naruto spent the rest of the time only with his male friends, who teased him about it mercilessly of course. Even Sasuke couldn't resist and teased Naruto about his fangirls. Nobody had more fun than Jiraiya, the chance to finally pay back Naruto was an opportunity he'd even give up a room full of beautiful young fangirls for. As match time got close Naruto was stuck for something to entertain Hanabi and Konohamaru. Hinata came to his rescue with a suggestion he let them play on the front grounds in the flower garden. Hanabi loved the idea, she was into flowers as much as her big sister Hinata. Naruto hugged her in thanks without thinking first Hinata fainted in his arms. A few minutes later they headed for training ground 1, while Hiashi took Konohamaru and Hanabi to the flower garden in front of the house. They were all talked excitedly about who would win, many were even bet large amounts of money. Once they reached the training ground Tsunade and Naruto stepped away from the tube, stopped at the edge, and turned to face them. Tsunade's expression said volumes before a single word escaped her lips. Everyone is aware of the nature of the matches so far, ours will not be any different. Naruto, during the match I want you to think of me as your enemy, not your friend, not your Bachan, not even your Hokage. His face told everyone how he felt, he was nervous. As your friend and your Hokage I'm asking you this. Tsunade turned and put her hands on his shoulders, her face soft. Promise me you won't hold back because you're afraid you'll hurt me. Naruto closed his eyes and lowered his head, obviously deep in thought. Everyone looked at him intensely because they knew Naruto never broke a promise. Nobody made a sound or moved for the 2 minutes he stood there. He raised his head and opened his eyes, his face turned to a hard expression only Tsunade and Jiraiya had seen before, the rest were taken back as they've never seen this side of him before. I promised Tsunade. His voice has none of the fun or happiness they usually hears, even in a fight for his life, there was nothing but cold, hard determination. Thank you Naruto, when we get inside I want you to activate the protection seal. Use any move or jutsu you want, anything short of a fatal attack. Tsunade said. Hi. Naruto said. Tsunade looked into his eyes and saw that he understood the full meaning of what she'd said. Without another word they stepped into training ground 1 and Naruto activated the protection seal. Naruto made a fist and hit the barrier with enough power to kill anyone there, which made them jump back in surprise. Sorry. Naruto said. Everyone sighed in relief then almost laughed almost. Be careful Naruto-kun. Most of the women said in unison. Naruto smiled briefly, then walked to the center of training ground 1, where Tsunade waited. Tsunade spoke to him quietly a moment, then they stepped back and bowed to each other. Good luck Naruto. Tsunade said seriously. Good luck Tsunade. Naruto said seriously. Both jumped back about 10 feet. Naruto nodded to Sasuke and Hinata who activated their Sharingan and Byakugan. Hiba took the role of ref. Ready. Naruto took his fighting stance. Tsunade removed her green jacket and tossed it aside, which left her in the black pants and grey sleeveless shirt with wide black belt she always wore. Jiraiya was the first to notice the difference from her normal appearance, his eyebrows went up as a big smile appeared on his face, he let out an unusual, but brief, laugh. A few moments later others noticed also. Fight. Kiba yelled. The instant Kiba said fight, you'd think all hell just broke loose and you'd be pretty close. Naruto leapt back 20 feet, flashed through a series of hand signs faster than most of the shinobi could follow, and held his arms straight out in front of him, fists together. Wind style. Air cannon bombardment. Tamari's chakra jumped drastically as she remembered that Naruto also had a wind affinity. Tamari was an expert on all wind-based jutsu, she thought, but she'd never heard of this jutsu. A 4-foot ball of swirling wind erupted from Naruto's fists with a deafening thum and roared at Tsunade at what Tamari figured was at least 300 miles per hour. A second later he launched another, then repeated this until 10 had been fired at Tsunade. But everyone's absolute shocked son not only didn't dodge the blasts, she slapped the air bullets away, each slap sounded like a thunderclap, each collided against a barrier like 20 exploding tags. Pretty good brat Tsunade said casually. Many people gasped in shock that Tsunade called that only pretty good. Is that all you have? Tsunade said and almost sounded bored. Naruto laughed and flashed through another series of hand signs at blinding speed. Earth style. Stone tsunami. Naruto stuck his arms out in front of himself like he pushed something. A wave of mainly rock rose out of the ground in front of him and roared at Tsunade, growing dramatically in size every second. Halfway to her Tsunade stomped her right foot on the ground, which sounded like thunder, and the ground between her and Naruto opened up and literally swallowed his attack before it closed up. And I hoped for a challenge. I'm bored Naruto. I'm a Kage-ranked jutsu expert. If you want to strip me then earn the right my way, or are you afraid you'll get spanked like the little brat you really are? Tsunade said and smiled. Spanked? You think you can spank me? Jiraiya has a better chance to get his hands on your naked priests than you do to spank me you old biss. Naruto yelled and smiled. Tsunade's right eye twitched. Everyone was truly shocked by what Naruto said, they never thought in 1,000 years he'd say something like that, especially not to Tsunade. Well, almost everyone. Jiraiya smiled as only he could, while dozens of interesting images of Tsunade flashed through his mind, and he blushed. Tsunade had a look on her face that could only be described as a mix of shock, anger, and something you'd never expect to see mixed in the look only someone doing what they truly enjoy in their heart can have. Tsunade felt like a little kid run wild. She rarely got the chance to truly cut loose and to spar against someone and not have to hold back for fear of killing them was a feeling she hadn't experienced in over 30 years. She even enjoyed trading the chance to sex-laced insults with Naruto. Shizune smiled at Tsunade's expression, happy to see Tsunade truly enjoyed herself for once. Is that a bet? Tsunade said seriously, but still smiled happily. Everyone, including Naruto, froze and stared at Tsunade slack-jawed. A BB bet. Naruto yelled with a rare nervous stutter. We finished the fight with taijutsu only. If I win you get a spanking here in front of everyone. If you win Tsunade smiled very slyly and thought. You wanna play in my league, Naruto, let's see what you've got. Tsunade thought. You can give me an over the knee, tits out, bare ass spanking right here in front of everyone. And just to make this more fun, for the rest of the party the winner can do anything they want to, and with a loser totally without restriction. Tsunade smiled slyly and gently rubbed her giant fists through her shirt. Take the bet, oh for the love of Kami please take the bet Naruto. Jiraiya yelled sincerely. Everyone turned and saw Jiraiya pressed against the barrier around training ground 1. What do say brat, if you're going to be the next Hokage, you have to be able to make the hard choices. And this isn't even life and death, when you lose it'll only cost you some dignity. Tsunade said honestly as she looked in his eyes so he knew it. Naruto glared at her. When I lose. I'm not gonna lose to you ever again. I told you 3 years ago I was gonna kick your butt and make you respect me, and now I'm gonna do it. Prepare to be humiliated. Naruto yelled, his ears flat back against his head, his tails waving wildly. That's it Naruto, give me everything you have, and I truly wish you the best of luck, prove me right about you, and it'll be worth more than you can imagine. Tsunade thought and took her fighting stance, her smile gone. Everyone could tell she'd finally gotten serious. Shizune however knew Tsunade better than anyone, right down to Tsunade's deepest secrets, good and bad. She could see a spark in Tsunade's eyes nobody else could detect. Oh Naruto-kun, I wish you knew just how happy you're making Tsunade, I wish she could tell you just how much she loves you. Shizune thought. Naruto walked to Tsunade and stopped 6 feet in front of her. I really hoped I wouldn't have to do this to you, but I can't use my best jutsu because most of them would just kill you and there isn't enough time to wear you down, so that just leads to jutsu doesn't it? Tsunade nodded. Naruto dropped his voice so only Tsunade could hear him. You really want me to use the same attack Sakura did? Hi. We should limit the headshots, so that leaves the body as our main target and those are the weakest areas of a woman's body. If I can Naruto, I will use your weakness against you. Tsunade smirked subtly, opened and clenched her right hand like she was squeezing something. You wouldn't dare. Naruto said, his eyes narrowed. Ask Jiraiya about my 16th birthday. Tsunade said, then laughed quietly. Back at the crowd many people saw Shizune flinch, but didn't know why she did. They saw Naruto open and flex his hand like Tsunade did, but only Shizune saw Tsunade's subtle nod. Naruto smirked and got into his fighting stance, an odd smile on his face. Tsunade, you didn't. Shizune thought, slightly worried about her friend now, although she still knew there was no real danger she couldn't help it. Shizune knew Naruto had gone through puberty during his training mission, his height, muscles and slightly deeper voice announced that clearly to everyone, but she had to glance at Jiraiya and wonder just how much he'd taught Naruto about women. Naruto-kun Tsunade said. Did Tsunade just call me Naru Naruto thought, then blocked a left hook to the head, a right to the stomach, then caught a right knee with his left hand, the impact of the 3 blocked attacks heard clearly by everyone. The instant he caught her knee he looked at her face. You sneaky bis. Naruto said playfully, then buried his right fist in her amazingly hard stomach between her huge fists. Tsunade let out an oof as a little air is knocked from her lungs, folded her slightly, and sent her skidding back about 8 feet. Everyone was impressed by the short exchange, especially that Naruto won it. Nice punch brat, but you'll have to do a lot better to hurt me. Tsunade said. I will. Naruto replied with a grin. A dust cloud suddenly exploded from where Tsunade was, she appeared in front of Naruto an instant later and missed a right cross to Naruto's head. He slipped behind her in a blink, drove a tremendous right into her lower back that dropped her to her knees with a scream, then a left hammer fist to her upper back put her down on all fours. Before Tsunade's hands hit the ground though, Naruto grabbed the ends of her 2 ponytails. He snapped them on her back like a cart driver. Did you old nag? Naruto said playfully. Everyone was shocked and most of them couldn't stop their laughter at the comical scene. Oh, you sneaky little shit. As Tsunade said the last word she drove her right foot back in a mule kick, her target obvious. Whoa, you're fast. Naruto said as he jumped back at lightning speed to avoid what would have been a devastating and very embarrassing kick. You think you're pretty funny don't you brat? Tsunade said, playfully angered. Naruto grinned, nodded and rubbed the back of his head. Okay, if that's how you want to do it, Tsunade said with a big lusty grin. I always did like it rough. Okay Tsunade, if you really want to be humiliated, I'll do it. Naruto said seriously. Naruto seemed to blur for a second, but it wasn't a jutsu, it was pure speed, and even Tsunade couldn't follow him this time. The next thing Tsunade saw was Naruto's face as he appeared in front of her, then she heard a long, deafening scream she quickly realized was her own. Naruto drove Swan back with hundreds up punches a second, each as powerful as hers, and all of them to her fists. The pain was even too much for her to block out. After a full minute of agony, Naruto suddenly stopped his brutal freest beating, but only long enough to send two thunderous uppercuts into her freest's dead center on her giant nipples, as Tsunade knew instantly that almost laid her freests over her shoulders inside her shirt. This got a louder scream from Tsunade, but it didn't last long as her scream suddenly doubled in intensity as she was immediately lifted off the ground about a foot by a kick to her wide-open womanhood. Naruto followed up immediately, before her lifted freests could even drop back, buried his fist in her stomach, which sent her flying backwards and ripped up the ground as she slid and, finally hit the barrier around the training ground. Everyone was stunned by the attack. Laid on her back, her head leaned up against the ripped-up ground piled against a barrier, she looked across the ground at a smiling Naruto. Damn, he really did it. I only have 2 chances to win this, but I doubt I'll be able to grab him, he's already blocked my knee and kick, he'd expect me to go for his balls now, but I have to try one more time while I have the strength. Tsunade thought. Tsunade forced herself to stand, an erotically competitive, but pain-filled smile on her face. Tsunade dusted herself off quickly. Impressive, but I'm not beaten yet. You want to spank my legendary fast, you'll have to do a lot better than that. Tsunade said confidently, but truthfully she'd used up a lot of her chakra already and was tired. Tsunade crossed the 60 or so feet between them in under 2 seconds and unleashed a full power kick aimed at Naruto's groin. Naruto sidestepped it at the last instant, grabbed her right leg and trapped it. Naruto smiled at her cruelly. You missed, Tsunade, I won't. Tsunade realized the vulnerable position she was now in. Oh shit. Before Tsunade could cover herself, Naruto stepped closer, her right leg still in his left hand, sent his right up between her spread legs, and locked a claw hold on the very heart of her womanhood with power that weakened even her iron resolve. Tsunade screamed in agony she'd never felt before, but that wasn't the worst part. Naruto released her leg and then just with the claw hold, lifted her 3 feet off the ground and held her there a full minute. He'd inflicted a lot of pain on her, but the physical damage is minimal, even without the healing jutsu she'll use on herself, the worst she'll suffer is some ugly bruises. Knowing how far he can push this, even with her consent, Naruto released his hold on her as he tossed her back onto the softened ground. Tsunade finally stood after about 3 minutes and looked at Naruto, clearly very sore in some sensitive places, but very impressed, breathed heavy and smiled, her hands on her thighs as she leaned forward. I don't believe it, I thought I'd do a lot better than this. You're a lot faster than I figured, Naruto, and stronger too. Tsunade laughed and winced. Oh, that hurt. You're just playing with me, aren't you? Everyone looked at him, he smiled big and nodded. I thought so. You can put me down anytime you want, can't you, Naruto? Tsunade said. Well, hi. Naruto said. I guess I have no choice then, I'll have to do it. Tsunade said seriously. So you admit defeat? Naruto said. Not a chance. I mean, to win this I'll have to use my ultimate attack while I still can. I'm sorry, Naruto, but this fight is over for you. There is no defense against this. Tsunade said. Everyone looked at Tsunade stunned, then at Shizune. What is Tsunade-sama going to do, is it a technique I can learn? Rock Lee asked, in his own excited way. Shizune looked at Tsunade and Naruto and noticed 2 things. Naruto was actually worried about this mystery attack. Like everyone, he thought he knew all Tsunade's techniques. Shizune looked deep in thought for a few seconds, then saw where Tsunade's hands were and for a second was actually confused until she looked into Tsunade's eyes. Her eyes got as big as saucers. She can't really be going to do that. Shizune said. Now everyone was curious as hell at what Shizune had talked about. Naruto, I want you to dispel the barrier now. Shizune said. Naruto looked at Shizune, but before he said a word her face silenced him, she gave him no choice. Naruto made the hand signs. Barrier release. Naruto said, and it was gone. You aren't stopping the match, Shizune. Tsunade yelled. No, Tsunade-sama, Naruto won't be able to dispel it while he's unconscious. Shizune said. Unconscious? Sasuke yelled, amazed by what he heard. Tsunade is going to knock Naruto out with one move. Sasuke said. Shizune nodded. Shizune. Tsunade said. Shizune nodded, nothing else needed to be said between them. I'm sorry, Lee, but you can't use this technique. If this was a real battle there wouldn't have been as much talk, everyone knew that, but this was a friendly spar with big stakes. Shizune knew what Tsunade had planned now, but this was something she never thought she'd ever see Tsunade do. Unable to read Shizune's face, everyone turned back to Tsunade and Naruto. Are you ready, Naruto? Tsunade said, took an odd stance. Her feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, her arms down, hands crossed in front of her black belt. Everyone felt the frightening rise in Tsunade's chakra. Naruto's senses told him she summoned all the chakra she could safely spare. Tsunade's face showed her extreme level of concentration. Give me your best move, Naruto. Tsunade said calmly. Naruto nodded respectfully and took an aggressive stance, ready to make a very likely near undetectable attack. The very instant Naruto made the tiniest twitch to attack, Tsunade unleashed her ultimate attack. Everyone froze dead in their tracks, even all breathing seemed to stop for several seconds, even Shizune was amazed, but not for the same reason as everyone else. Tsunade had moved even faster than Naruto could follow, and then everything went black. The look on his face could only be described as absolute shock and awe, but it wasn't only on Naruto's face. Only Tsunade, Shizune, Sakura and Kurenai still on their feet, everyone else was out cold. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Peace out.